So we have a whole lot to talk about in the outgoing year, 2020. One year that the world will not forget in a hurry. Some say it's a year to remember, while others say it's a year to forget. Whichever, the echoes of the year 2020 is definitely reverberating into the new year 2021 in more ways than the current new strain of the virus and the vaccine being produced and distributed, at least for now, in the Western Hemisphere. For emerging and frontier economies like Nigeria, analysts say never waste a good crisis. Let's start this two-way conversation with Dr. Bunmi Banjo. She is the group head in charge of corporate bank manufacturing. That's a big title, by the way. Of course, if you work in a big bank like First Bank, that's a very big title. So we have the big madam this evening to talk to us on Look Back 2020 and Look Forward 2021. Good evening. It's good to see you, Dr. Banjo. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. You just put it in a very simple way. What were the hallmarks of the outgoing year 2020 for you?
Thank you. 2020 is indeed a year like I've never been seen. It's a year that no one saw coming. I mean, at the turn of 2019, we all looked forward to prosperity, a near sense of normalization. Then 2020 came February, and then you had the coronavirus crisis. The coronavirus crisis, as we've all come to see, was not only a health crisis, it was indeed an imminent restructure of the world global order. Indeed, the 2020 will be remembered by the schism, the world as we knew it before the COVID crisis, and the world, our new world, the new normal post the COVID crisis in 2021 and beyond. The world took notice when in around March 2020, there was an unprecedented development in Wuhan, China. We watched as there was a construction of a 1,000-bed hospital. Typically, that would have been a 2-year project. But that occurred within an unprecedented period of 10 days. The world took notice and everyone panicked, fearing a repeat of the 1918 swine flu pandemic, in which over 50 million lives were lost. Hence, the institution of various restrictive measures, and then we had several words added to our lexicon by way of social distancing, washing of hands, working from home. Indeed, at the heat of the COVID crisis, over 95% of the world 80.9 trillion GDP went on holidays. And while labor was on holiday, digitalization took over. Where individual and human capital could not function, labor came to our rescue and changed the way we all operate, the way we would operate, and the future globally. So for me, 2020 had been a year of unprecedented first, a year in which we had what had never been seen before, but the world responded with an unprecedented palliative by way of stimulus. Over 10.6 trillion were deployed within an 8-week period. Hence where we are today.
A very interesting year. And from everything you've said, I think sometimes we seem to forget with the number of fatalities and those who were infected that some feat were achieved this year with that 1,000-bed hospital built in China within just a couple of hours or so, which could have in another climes that could have taken years or decades to even put together. So quite a very interesting year. But is 2020 a year to remember or a year to forget? Or is it a matter of semantics? And if you say it's a year to remember or it's a year to forget, why would you want to forget if you so much remember?
To me, you can't forget the event of 2020. 2020 was a black swan occurrence. It hardly ever happens more than once in a lifetime, and we all lived through that once in a lifetime experience. 2020 is a year that you can't forget. How do you forget that over 70 million of world population have been affected by this pandemic and over 1.7 million lives lost just like that to one episode of a virus? So 2020 cannot be forgotten. What is imperative is that the lessons of 2020 must remain with us. Don't forget that before the advent of coronavirus, the world was moving towards digitalization, but we were moving to everything being fast and being done instantaneously. You know that we prioritize just in time versus the diversification of supply sources. But with COVID crisis, we realize that, you know what, it's important to have a just-in-time supply chain, but diversification of supply sources is even much more important. Remember that at the height of the COVID crisis, even companies like Apple could not continue their production because they didn't have the necessary component to manufacture your normal day iPhone. So, you know, 2020 would not be, we would not have maximized the impact of 2020 if we just forgot everything that happened.
So my important question, which we're taking on when we come back after the break with you, is what the key lessons are for you as a professional and as a business leader within the banking industry. We'll get back to you, Dr. Bunmi Banjo, after the break. Stand by, everyone. You're watching Arise Exchange. Let's just bring you up to speed what we're getting in from the news wires that the Nigeria's Communications Commission has extended the deadline given to all the telcos to link SIM cards with national identity number, what you call the NIN. We've seen on social media today some of the images from the offices of the Nigeria Identity Management Commission, which is NIMC. Hundreds and hundreds of people queuing up, and the whole issue around registration. Now news says that the NCC has extended until January 19, 2021 for those of us who have our SIM cards and our national identity numbers to link the two together. The deadline has been moved from the end of this month to January the 19th next year. And for those who do not have national identity number or national identification number at the moment, you have until February 9, 2021 to make that happen, then connect the SIM card with your national identification number. Thus, the news coming through right now from the Nigeria Communications Commission extending that initial 2 weeks deadline, which is caused a couple of uproar, as it were. Part of our take on for 2020. Let's continue this conversation with the group head in charge of corporate banking, manufacturing, and the First Bank, Dr. Bunmi Banjo. Thank you so much. And you were touching on, Madam, on a very important point just then, but we had to take that break. My apologies. But what are the key lessons of the year 2020 for you as a professional and as a business leader?
Okay, thank you. For me as a professional, number one takeaway for me is that succession planning is key. We saw it at the heat of the COVID crisis where the promoters became ill from virus, and for companies who didn't have adequate succession planning, there were gaps left. So the first thing is that for every business organization, there must be that line of succession where, should the promoter not be available, there is someone readily available to take over. Remember that for the UK, the Prime Minister was almost lost to this virus in 2020. But because there was a structure and an effective governance system, the nation didn't have to grind to a halt. We saw the US president also being ill, but the state of governance still continued. So for me, the importance of succession planning cannot be underestimated. Second also is that, you know what, profit maximization is important, but employee preservation is even more important. In March, April, May of 2020, profit maximization was not the vogue. It was who can protect their employee the most and which employee was available for continuity purpose. Another thing that is important, like I said before, is an effective supply chain. So that presents an opportunity for countries like Nigeria, India, where China is not available. I mean, the world has learned that you cannot readily rely on a single economy as your supply source. So the world is looking to diversify. For me, as a business person, I would seek opportunity where my country and indeed the rest of sub-Saharan Africa could maximize their human capital endowment and be a ready source of supply for the world. The UK is going through Brexit. They are looking for partners in food supply, in agri value chain. That is one of the learning for an emerging economy like us. So those are the key things that I would prioritize going forward into 2020, while also leveraging whatever macro indicators present as we move forward.
I get that. Again, when you talk about the supply chain disruption, because we all have China as the backbone of the global economy in the manner of speaking. So what you do with First Bank relates to the manufacturing sector. So I'm sure you will mention manufacturing if I ask you a short list of sectors you consider the most resilient in Nigeria this year, in which you are seeing some changes being taken on board from 2020 to 2021. Are we seeing these changes in supply disruption? Are we seeing new lines being opened, or do we see industry operators within your sector beginning to think in that direction?
Yeah, we see new opportunities coming on stream. As you know, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will be coming on stream 1st of January 2021. That presents an opportunity for the productive base of the Nigerian economy. Indeed, the manufacturing sector stands to benefit the most, along with other sectors, from the African Free Trade Agreement that has been signed. But, you know, it will only remain an opportunity if we do not maximize the benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Also, in terms of sectors that would likely drive growth going forward, like you've said, number one will be agric development. The agric sector has shown significant resilience throughout COVID, and it stands to even show more as we go forward. Next is construction. Given the current low level of interest rate in the Nigerian economy, if monies will start to find other alternative sources. You've seen the rebound in stock market capitalization. We're now at above 19.5 trillion. That's, those sort of opportunities will dovetail into our exports base, and also our exports, as well as other sectors such as the financial services industry. With the pandemic and also the IFRS requirement, you've seen the need for capitalization. There had been drive towards the mobilization of Tier 2 capital. This will likely continue, but as you've seen, the Nigerian financial system has shown significant resilience. But that resilience will further be tested by the exchange policy that the federal government will pursue going forward, and the interest rate direction that the economy will undertake. As you've seen now, Nigeria is almost falling into a sort of liquidity trap because the interest rate is quite low. That presents a dilemma. What do you do next? Do you continue to increase money supply? Money supply will most likely increase, judging by the level of activity and the current restriction around FX utilization, and also the availability of FX in Nigeria. What then do you do with the money that is in circulation? Do you deploy them to productive base? That productive base will only come on stream if the exchange rate situation abates or is modified or becomes more favorable. Do you want to? So based on liquidity trap, it means that the interest rate must go up. But you see that the CBN is actually more favorable to the current interest rate regime. But the current interest rate regime does not seem to be sustainable because it's now actually negative, going by the rate of inflation, which is at 14.9, versus the level of monetary policy rate, if we want to use that, at 11.5. So what then do you do going forward? There will need to be a realignment of both the interest rate and the exchange rate policy as we forge ahead.
In terms of exchange rate, which is some folks always consider the big elephant, the elephant in the room, and the last time First Bank brought a big elephant on Market Street was a couple of years ago. I remember that. So this is exchange rate. How big is it? Is this elephant in the room? And how critical do you think it is for next year for Nigeria's balance of payment, current accounts, and the whole issue around exchange rate, supply, demand, and all of that?
Actually, the exchange rate system regime is actually the biggest elephant in the room because the exchange rate drives the direction of growth for the Nigerian economy. As you know, Nigeria is an import-dependent economy. despite the fact that petroleum products, which accounts for a significant source of our exchange rate inflow, only accounts for about less than 10% of the GDP, but oil economy drives over 90% of our export earnings. So what can you do in a regime where that source of FX is challenged? It means that for us to actually drive growth, for all our leading indicators to fall within our expectation, the exchange rate structure must be addressed. And if you look at it now, the exchange rate structure drives how much is produced, it drives the level of aggregate demand, it drives the level of interest rate, it drives the cost of production for the manufacturing sector, the agri sector, and all of the sector. It drives what happened in construction, it drives the level of profitability of even the financial segment as well. So the government will need to address the exchange rate situation, either that do we want to have a fully floating exchange rate, or it will be a guided exchange rate regime.
We'll see what 2021 brings along. Thank you so much, Dr. Bunmi Banjo, the group head in charge of corporate banking manufacturing at First Bank of Nigeria. Let me be the first to know when next you have an elephant on Broad Street.